Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is 10:59, going on in about 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes to see if anybody shows up live. Just going to give it a minute or two. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm just giving it another minute or two to see if anybody else comes on live. It's Tuesday, it's not Monday, so I might have switched some people's schedule. But thank you for being here. Good morning. I'm going to give it another couple of minutes. It's a nice opportunity for us to drop into mindful attention, mindful awareness. These lives are really a great place to practice just settling in, just arriving, and just being with what is, with who's here, and with the possibility of just being in the moment. Okay, I'm gonna get started simply because I like to start on time as much as possible and that this is recorded. So, good morning to you. Thank you for being here. Today's topic is on death and dying. I just returned from Montreal this past weekend. We had a family member pass away very unexpectedly. Um, an extended family member who was super healthy, super active, led a full life full of excitement. He traveled, he seems to have lived his life to the fullest. And yet, he passed away suddenly, unexpectedly. And he died instantly or almost instantly. So there was no suffering involved, which seems to be such a big topic of conversation with death and dying and suffering, the amount of suffering that one sometimes has to incur on their way out as they are leaving. Some people live with diseases, and certainly I have experience with both clients and friends who have had cancer for many years prior to dying. And so that can be viewed and seen as a long and painful death. And then others die instantly, like my family member did last, I guess, 2 Saturdays ago already. So I wanted to just bring up the topic today because it's real, it's live, it's happening in the moment, and to kind of look at death and dying more from a mindfulness perspective. So I have a little bit of text. I've put together a little bit of text for us to explore. And at any time, if you have a question or you want to interject, please do just write in the comments. And I want to start by honoring, first of all, the process of death and dying. That what was so beautiful about being with my family just now, this last weekend, was that we come together as a family. We come together and create a ritual, create a circle of creation, a circle of trust, a circle of love, such as this one that I want to create live every week. And then beyond, of course, so that maybe this piece that we're doing, sharing here together, might inspire you to expand into your family and to start to create these circles of love and trust and creation while we're alive, so that when it comes our time, when we are called to death and when our time to die comes, that we will have invested of ourselves, of our energy, of our love with our loved ones, and also to expand beyond that, to be in a spirit, in an energetic field of love, quite literally transforms how we live our lives. And so when death occurs like this, super unexpectedly, which shocks us, and of course everyone is in pain, grieving for our loss, which I think is also very healthy, to be able to come together and to grieve as a group, as a family, as people who love, and sometimes even as strangers, because there were a lot of people there that I didn't know, but we all came to celebrate this one person's life. There is a lot of healing that occurs in those moments, in those environments, whether it's at home or at a funeral home or anywhere we find ourselves. There is in that moment a healing process that occurs, that starts to happen as we share and we cry and we're touched and we're feeling. Everything is about, the body is about feeling, is about emotion. And it was really touching to see this past weekend how many people were profoundly feeling, from myself, who was deeply touched, to my little great nephews who were very emotional and crying. So, from little ones, 7 years old, all the way up to adults and people who were just feeling in their bodies this sense of loss and grief. And how grateful I am that I was there with everyone, that I was part of that grieving for this person whom we loved, whom we cherished, who was part of the family, and we a part of his family. So, to bring the idea of death and dying from a perspective of mindfulness, and how can we integrate this mindfulness in our lives today as we are alive and living, so that, in a sense, we are preparing to death. I mean, we're all going to die. That's the one sure thing. If we are born, we are going to die. And what happens in between, I feel, is what is so significant as to what will inform our death or our state of being when we die. It's a complete mystery, obviously. We don't know when we're going to be called and when death is going to come. But how are we living our days? How do we live mindfully every day? And in a sense, what I practice in my life is that every morning is an awakening. I awaken. And every night I die. As I go to sleep, there's a pause, there's a repose that happens. And one of the practices that I find so deeply helpful is that upon sleep, when I go to bed every night, I just really put my hands together and thank uh, God, the universe, for another day. And then I review my day and I remind myself of everything that went well throughout my day, even though some days can be challenging, can't they? And yet, this practice of moving into a state of gratitude upon sleep when you go to bed at night. And I always remember that it's not guaranteed that I will awaken. Certainly, I had that experience this last December in 2021 when I had COVID and I was really sick. I was really surprised at how sick I was because I don't like to be sick. I don't think anyone likes to be sick, but I'm not a great sick person. I'm not usually sick. I'm very rarely sick. And so this really brought a lot of light in the sense that I deepen this practice, this relationship with being grateful, thankful before I fall asleep at night for my day. No matter how my day went, I still take a moment to be grateful for it. And then the same upon awakening in the morning. And usually, what I'll do is I'll put a hand on my heart and a hand on my belly, and I'll just breathe into my hands and I'll just be grateful that my eyes are open, that I have another day of possibility in front of me. I have another day to make a difference. I have another day to record a live Q&A. Bonjour, bonjour, bonjour. Salut Christiane, salut Gérald. Ah, c'est le fun que vous êtes là. Merci. And so my family's here, so I'm very touched by that. So I get very emotional. So that's awesome. Thank you for being here. And so upon arising, what I was just saying is we awaken and die every day. And upon arising in the morning, I put my hand on my chest and on my belly, and I'm grateful. I say thank you for another day. Thank you for the possibility of another day. And honestly, between you and I, when I was sick in December, it was really hard to practice that because when we don't feel good and when we don't regularly practice having a conversation with death on a daily basis, right, through mindful awakening, just being aware that death can come at any moment, well, what it does for me is it gives me more insight into how to live my life to the fullest and to remember that every day that I awaken, there's a possibility. Every day that I awaken, excuse me, I might be able to do something for someone. I might be able to reach out. Excuse me. I might be able to do something that supports my neighbor, even being kind to someone on the street or at the store. These tiny acts of random kindness change us. They change how we operate in life. And when we come together as a family to grieve a lost one, everything else disappears. It's like all of the veils, all of the stories, all of the things that aren't working in our life, they disappear. And there's a really great example of this because my family is quite spread out. And so I'm in New York, and then there are other family members in different provinces in Canada. And how, when I found out, my niece let me know that one of our family members had passed away, instantly there's no thought about distance or time. There's an absolute connection to heart and to love and to grief and to shock. And in that instance, there's no doubt one way or another that we are going to get in the car or get on a plane and move and go there to celebrate, to be with family, so that we might process together. Because when we process together, there is a physiological occurrence in the body that heals us, that we feel supported, that there's an extension of life that moves through us and through the departed, through the person that has died. So it was amazing to see, of course, instantly how we all, got in our cars, no matter how far we came from, so that we can be together to celebrate life, to celebrate this person's life and his death at the same time. And so I wanted to really bring this to the fore to remind us of the inevitability of death, that we are all moving towards death and how that changes us every time someone in our life dies, especially in this way, unexpectedly, how it changes us a little bit, how we move into our desire to live life a little bit more to the fullest, to grow a little bit more to the fullest, to insert more awareness, more mindfulness, more consciousness in our lives. And that's what this weekend did for me. It reminded me again to begin again, to get up again, to keep going again, to not let the outside noise or whatever obstructions or obstacles or challenges that I'm confronted with to just begin again, to remember that as long as there's breath in my body, that I have an opportunity to support and love and care and extend myself in the best way that I can. And at the same time, to be kind, to practice this meditation of kindness towards myself, to forgive myself if I don't reach out to as many people as I might want to on any given day, or whatever mistakes or flaws that I might be confronted with on a regular basis. This practice of forgiveness is also very, very healing. And so in this case, this weekend, it's kind of a weird thing because you find yourself together because someone has died, someone that we all loved. And I'm with my family, extended family, and I'm feeling so profoundly touched and in love with everyone that's there. It gives us a chance to reconnect, to catch up to what's been going on. And as my brother would say, it's it's very weird how we all never hesitate to come together for death, and yet when we have parties or we celebrate life, a lot of the time, other things take priority. And that's just life. That's just life. That's how it is. But I can appreciate that perspective of when someone dies, suddenly there's no hesitation. We will all get together. And then at the same time, when it's time to celebrate someone's birthday or an event or a party, life gets in the way. We're busy or we had other plans. And so choosing also how we want to invest our energy in family, in friends, in gatherings is also a really great time. It's a really good thing to contemplate, to really think about, well, what's most important and how might my presence there help or support or bring more love to a circle. And also, if we can't make all of those celebratory events, to practice the art of forgiveness, to practice the art of just being with oneself and still extending love, still reaching out and accepting that life is as it is, so that we don't add more stress to our lives, so that we don't add more pain or, in a sense, some blame, shame on ourselves for not being able to make every gathering. And yet we make the time to show up for important gatherings such as was this weekend. So I wanted to share a little bit about something that I wrote around the idea, of mindful death. Birth and death, the bookends to our existence. One, we get excited about and celebrate. And by the way, there was new life in our family as well. One of our family members just gave birth to a new little boy about, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it's interesting how we have the component of death and dying, and that's why we gather together. And at the same time, life continues. More life occurred. Someone else was born. And so there's kind of this deep sadness and despair and grief, and at the same time, this mystery of life, that life occurs, ignites, is born. And we navigate, we float between these two emerging sensations, emotions that show up in our lives. So that was amazing to also have that connection, to know that a new life had come into the world a few weeks ago. From a very, very beautiful mom and dad, they were very proud, and you could see the excitement and life in their eyes, even while we are at the funeral home, even while we are grieving and supporting those closest to the departed. It's an ongoing enigma, in and out. We're here, we live, we die. But that part of how we lived, how are we living on a daily basis, is something that I'm constantly contemplating and moving into and exploring, so that I might grow older with more grace, with more love in my heart, with more personal forgiveness, with more capacity to extend, hopefully to become a better role model for my own nieces and nephews, to be able to support them when they have issues in their lives. So on the one end, we get excited by birth, and then on the other, we dread and push away death. The fear of death means that many people can't even think about it, let alone discuss its harsh realities. In the West, meaning in North America, our culture shies away from the topic. Yet, it's an unavoidable experience. One day we are sure to die. One day a loved one will pass. Death is a part of life. Facing our own mortality can be uncomfortable and for some distressing. But when we befriend death, when we approach death mindfully, its force doesn't necessarily derail us in the same way. The grief and pain are still deeply felt, of course, but we are better equipped to accept loss and make peace with death. In addressing the prospect of dying, we open ourselves up to every little nuance of what it means to be alive. The author Terry Tempest Williams wrote, "Our fear of death enslaves us to the illusion that we will live forever. It's this illusion of permanence that mindfulness can help dissolve." And the best way to achieve a mindful death is to develop a mindful life. This way, we can better appreciate how fragile and meaningful life is. And therefore, we have more gratitude for the preciousness of every moment, every breath, and a life lived fully. So, I wanted to share uh, quickly this idea about living forever. Now, there's this possibility to live longer, be younger, stay healthier, even uh, artificial intelligence kicks in and lets us know that there's a possibility for us to live longer. And I'm not against the idea of living longer. I'm not ready to die yet, for sure. And at the same time, I'm one of those people who believes that life is meant to be savored, it's meant to be lived, and then when we're done, we're done. I personally am not someone who wants to extend my life once my time comes. It's an interesting concept of focusing on how we can live forever, and I find that that oftentimes takes away from the meaningfulness, from the importance of living a full and well life today. And I think that we saw that this weekend from our family member who had lived a very full life. He traveled all over the world. He was super active, very involved with sports, a quiet guy, right? Not a loud person, but always open, always generous. I remember in family gatherings, we'd always find ourselves, in the corner talking for a little bit. And, the natural kind of wave that happens in family gatherings, like a couple of people would find themselves there chatting for a while, and then that would shift to someone else. And of course, I remember him fondly, and many of our conversations around travel, around explorations, experiences, and just that, just to take the time to sit with someone and to appreciate the exchange, the conversation. Um, in many ways, I had no idea just how far he had gone in his life through his travel. And it was always a very profound and wonderful and very simple exchange. And that's the other piece about this idea of living forever. I find that it takes away from the benefits of simplicity of being here today and of just sitting and being together as a family, as friends. And that's one thing that I will say that my family does really well. And especially one of my brothers who has been very and supportive. My middle brother and his wife have been very, very supportive in creating all these events, all these parties, all these gatherings that have continuously held us together as a family. My other sister also did a lot of parties for a very long time. And all of these gatherings have created a sense of unity and a sense of being able to be in a space together to share and to deepen our appreciation for one another. And so it was very much like that this past weekend where we came together to feel the totality of pain, of grieving, of feeling like this life went too quickly. It went too quickly. And it reminds us all, and we are all confronted with our own death, of course. And so part of that helps me for sure, and maybe it helps you also to connect again to what's occurring today, connect again to what can we do today in our own lives for ourselves to increase the quality of our lives. Who is it that we might reach out to? Where might we be able to extend gratitude and love for another person for what they've done? And also, something I deeply believe in is to look back in our lives and see where are there some knots that are not beautifully tied. Meaning, are there any relationships that need repair, that can possibly be repaired? Are there any people in your family or your friends or extended acquaintances where it is appropriate to heal the relationship? And sometimes it's possible to do it with our loved ones or friends, but sometimes, even though it might not be possible to talk or to say it live, we can do it in our own hearts. We can release our attachment to how someone has been unfair or unjust or has wronged us in some way. And we've all had that experience. All of us have had the experience of being wronged or minimized in our life. And so for me, death reminds me that I need to let go. I need to let go if there's anything in my own life, any ties, any pain, any hurt that continues to live in me. Because when that pain and regret or bitterness or resentment lives in my psyche, in my body, it shows up in different parts of my life. It's not just with that one person. It shows up in different parts of my life and it's unconscious. And there's a piece that stays stuck to my own internal connective tissue where it's not always easy to forgive, but forgiveness is a practice. Forgiveness is a practice. And it doesn't come overnight. Certainly, it has not come for me overnight. And there's still space for us to practice forgiveness. So, facing death, something that we hear a lot is life is too short. But how much does that truth change the way we live? Because if we genuinely reflect on that inescapable truth, then the years we are alive suddenly take on a sharper focus. We would perhaps be motivated to live a better life with more vigor and vibrancy. Awareness around our mortality helps us focus on our approach to life, on who and what matters, and what's worth fighting for, and what's not. It might sound counterintuitive, but in acknowledging death, we become more alive. It puts everything into perspective. Mindful death means facing death. By facing death, the idea is that we remove ourselves from the fear of death. Death is the great unknown. We don't know the how, the when, or the where. And the mind tends to fear what's unknown. The majority of people, those who don't work in the emergency services, the military, hospitals, hospices, etc., don't encounter death in everyday life. So it requires a conscious effort to familiarize ourselves with the prospect of dying. In the same way, we have to familiarize ourselves with aging. When we accept our own time or a loved one's time is fast running out, and we need to make the most of our memories with them, we are more likely to discover a newfound appreciation when it matters. Facing death can also be liberating. It can make us more compassionate, and we weigh what arguments or grievances are worth holding on to. It may even be that we have been carrying the burden of shame or guilt for a wrong we believe we once committed. So there is more room to make amends or to seek reconciliation. So perhaps Ha ha ha. Hello, Manon. Welcome. Nice to see you. So perhaps there's a place for us to expand our awareness, our mindful awareness and gratitude into our daily life and into reconciliation where it's appropriate. And if not to reconciliate with another directly, to practice the art of reconciliation so that we might find inner peace, so that we might live a more mindful, grounded, loving, free, peaceful life. Because certainly as I'm getting older, I'm looking for one thing in my life, and that's peace. I'm looking for one thing in my life, and that is peace. To move forward in a way where I can be more at peace myself, and how might I bring more peace to those around me, with my clients, with my students, with my mentees, and to really practice this everyday mindful approach to sharing love, to sharing insight, to being in our line, to being centered in our line, so that when death comes, when our loved ones pass on, to be able to share the grief, to be able to share the pain as a community, as a family, to have gatherings, because in so doing, we automatically release our attachment to having to isolate and live this all by ourselves. It's so ironic in our culture how everything we do in our life, or everything that, in the way that my life has evolved anyways, you focus on you focus on your career, on making money, on having the appropriate material acquisitions and so forth, and that's important. And yet with time, every day that I live and as I get older, I really tap into what's most important in my life. Or what's most important is to breathe. What's most important is to be healthy. What's most important is to be able to connect and to extend my love, my support through my work, through doing these lives, through having you join me on these lives. I don't take anyone's time for granted. So, how might we develop a better relationship with death? It's a daily practice, it's a mindfulness practice. I'm getting older. I'm definitely getting closer to death than I've ever been before. Certainly, I think about my beloved family members and the reality that we're all going to pass through life and move towards this very important next step of life, which I believe death is that. I personally don't believe that death is the end. I think that death is a process, a continuation into something else. What? I don't know. I haven't been there yet, but there's enough science and evidence to know that there's some sort of tunnel of light somewhere. There's some sort of passageway that takes us to another place. And so I'd rather focus on that. I'd rather focus on the light and on the healthy vision, healthy awareness, healthy mindful attention of death than to be stuck in the sorrows. And that's why, for me, it's important to tie up my knots, to not leave anything messy in my life, to say to those I love you, to ask for forgiveness if I need to ask for forgiveness, so that when my day comes, I might be able to leave peacefully, that I don't have any regrets and remorse. Yes, transformation. That's beautiful. So I'm going to ask you to share some insights, or share what you're feeling right now. Share where you are. Share maybe a couple of lines as to what your experience with death is. Share what your thoughts around death is. Just a few words so we can have a little bit of an exchange. And I totally agree with transformation. It's absolutely a transformation that also happens with our animals. I have so many friends who have animals that are like their family, and it's super painful when death comes. So I don't know if you have an animal in your life. I think that you certainly did, Manon, that you had your beloved dog pass in your life and how painful that was, and how we learn to live with that. We learn to live with the reality of impermanence, the importance of impermanence, and to move into the next section, the next sector of a life through death. So I think that's it for me today. Unless you have any questions, I just wanted to take a moment to underline and to really talk about this and to share about our experience as a family, my experience as a family this past weekend. And Manon writes, after having both my parents die in May and July of 2021, plus my doggy last March, yeah, painful. Feels like being in a vortex. Yeah, I can totally relate. My parents also have died, and I was there when my mother passed. So I saw her transition from one state to another. And it is transformational. It's unbelievable. It's a complete mystery. And I've been around a lot of dead bodies based on my work. I've done a lot of dissection work, so I have worked with a lot of cadavers in my life in laboratories, medical laboratories. And I think that really helped me to deal with the death of my parents because I wasn't so shocked by what happens, the form they found themselves in, but more painful with the doggy. Was closer to me. That's interesting. Yeah, your dog was closer to you than your parents. Yeah, that happens too. That absolutely happens too. Well, that's your partner, right? That's your this transient being that's living with you all the time. So it's interesting how sometimes our animals become even closer to us than our parents or our family members. Yeah, I definitely felt like it was a vortex when my parents died, both of them. Even though my father had passed when I arrived at the hospital, it was a very profound experience that changed me forever, and my mother as well. Because what happens when we experience death also is we think about the lives that they had. We reflect back upon the lives that they've had, and from our interpretation of what we know about how people have lived, sometimes it's really hard for those of us who remain, those of us who stay, because I come from a large family. I have 5 siblings, and I think every one of us has a different relationship with our parents. Inevitably, we were born at a different time. We had different experiences and relationships with our parents. I know that I had a very different relationship to my mom and father than all of my siblings. And so when I look back at their life, of what I know, of what my experience was with them, was very different to some of my siblings' experience. And so there's that remembrance of the past, of what happened. And there can be a lot of pain there also. There can be a lot of regret. And there can be sadness based on how people live their lives or how their lives turned out. And we, the ones who remain alive, have to live with that grief. And that's why I find mindfulness so important, because it helps us to come back to the reality of where our lives are, and that ultimately there's a lot of letting go that needs to happen. We have to be able to let go. Otherwise, we carry that pain and grief with us moving forward, and that affects, of course, the quality of our lives today. Parents were 89. We were expecting that. Yeah, that makes sense when parents are a little bit older. Always hard, but still. As a child, I never expected to live as long as I have. I never expected to have the life I do. I feel very grateful every day. I feel hopeful that I'm raising my children to an age that they can live their lives independently. I don't know what else to describe. Well, I think that's a beautiful description. Thank you for sharing that. I never expected to have the life that I do. I feel very grateful every day. I feel hopeful that I'm raising my children to an age that they can live their lives independently. I don't know what else to describe. Thank you. That's beautiful. I think your children are beautiful, and they are living independently, and they're very supportive and loving of their family. They have their hearts at the right place, I would say, or that's certainly my experience of them. We all experience death according to our own trauma and encounter. I remember being very afraid of death, and now, since 1994, I do not fear death anymore. Beautiful, Manon. Thank you. Yeah, trauma is another piece that can be reignited when we are facing death or when our loved ones die. But it sounds like, for whatever reason, since 1994, you've done a lot of work on yourself. And I think that when we continuously work on ourselves, one way or another, I have a very ongoing spiritual practice. I've always had a spiritual practice. I've always been a meditator. I've always believed in spirits and the universe and God, and that I'm guided, that I have angels around me and the energy of life that supports me. I've always been very connected to that reality, and that really helps me to when I look at my life today, I see how much I have been guided and supported through it all. And a huge part of it for me was my family that has always been there for me. And that's amazing. That's amazing in the reality of life, to have felt like I have been consistently supported in my life by my family. That's a baseline for me. That is a strong foundational baseline for me. So in some ways, my relationship with death is a conversation. I have a conversation with death, very aware that my most beloveds will die. I don't know when. I might go first, but whenever we go, that I have a profound relationship with them, whether we connect every day or not. There's a profound relationship today in this moment, which gives me more life, which makes me appreciate my life even further. Ça s'appelle du lâcher prise, exactement. Depression de destiny. Ah, ok, oui. Oui, le lâcher prise, en effet, Manon. Exactement. Oui, le lâcher prise, c'est ça. Mais le lâcher prise, c'est aussi un processus. C'est un processus de lâcher prise. Et je pense un enseignement inévitable en vieillissant. Parce que si on ne lâche pas prise, on a tout notre bagage tout le temps. On fonctionne, on marche, on vit tout le temps avec des gros bagages. C'est pour ça que je disais tantôt que quand c'est possible de lâcher prise, de laisser aller, de pardonner ou de se pardonner, ça nous soutient davantage. On vit une vie encore plus pleine, je pense, quand on est capable de lâcher prise réellement. Yes, a conversation. How do you say lâcher prise en anglais? Letting go. Letting go. Lâcher prise is letting go en anglais. Mais le lâcher prise, en effet. Et il y a toute une science derrière le lâcher prise aussi. Dans le mindfulness, qu'on appelle en anglais, c'est prise de conscience en français. Ça s'appelle prise de conscience. Et c'est tout un environnement, c'est un enseignement où on apprend vraiment à passer à travers nos journées, à chaque moment, d'être vraiment conscient, de prendre conscience, d'entrer en alignement avec soi-même au niveau de prise de conscience. Ça nous aide à relaxer, ça aide avec les traumatismes aussi. Parce que quand on lâche prise, à un moment donné, il faut qu'on accepte la vie qu'on a eue. Il faut qu'on accepte la vie qu'on a. Et encore une fois, penser, s'éveiller à chaque matin et de voir qu'il y a une autre possibilité, même si les choses sont dures, même si les choses transitionnent, même si c'est pas comme on pensait que c'était pour être. On a des idées, on a une idée de comment la vie va se dévoiler devant nous, comment on va avancer. Mais ça n'arrive pas toujours comme ça. Yeah, merci. Thank you for your comments. Je sais que probablement que vous êtes tous francophones. Vous êtes avec moi, mais quand je vais faire la traduction en anglais, when I upload my video, it's going to be recorded in English. So we'll probably miss a piece there in French. But I really love that. I love that I have such a nice community of both French, English, and Spanish speaking clients and students, because it's nice to go from one language to the other and to support my French culture. Alors, merci. Oui, vive le moment présent. Plus simple, exactement, Manon. Vivre le moment présent. Oui, vivre dans la simplicité, vivre dans le moment présent. Et je pense qu'en vieillissant, en tout cas pour moi, c'est ce qui se présente. To live in simplicity, to live in mindful awareness, to grieve, to feel your emotions, to feel the pain, to cry, to be able to cry. It is so important. And to support those also when they are going through a hard time. To support those, God knows, I did not expect to go through such a hard and long period of time in my life, in my own personal relationship. And I'm so grateful that I had support around me because sometimes it's tough and we can't always do it alone. I would say we can never do it alone. We need the support of others. We need to be there for one another and to have compassion when people go through hard times, to be able to support them. And that's a whole other field of practice as well. This practice of mindful awareness, compassion, forgiveness, self love. I find that nurturing and cultivating these qualities makes death easier in a sense that there's a place for death in my life. There's a place for transformation, for transition, for evolution. To view death as a natural part of life, nature. Everything is born and everything dies. And that means us because we are nature. We are made of natural organic fabric, aren't we? We are not robots. We are humans. We feel, we love, we cry, we change our minds, we change our philosophies. So to be open to all of that, I love the practice of compassion because God knows I have changed in my life. And sometimes when I get more rigid around somebody else's perspective, I always try to come back to my center and remember, Anne-Marie, you have changed so much in your life. Be kind, be patient. Kindness, the art of kindness. Alors, ça y est. Je vous remercie infiniment de votre présence. Merci, Gérald, Christiane, d'être là. Ça me fait super plaisir d'être avec vous ce matin. Merci, Manon. This will be recorded. I'm going to upload it to my Art of Alignment Creative Leadership Coaching group page. I love you too. I love you too. Thank you for being here, for spending your time with me, and for supporting me in my lives. I will be back next Monday, 11 a.m., same place. And might extend this conversation of death and dying. I think I want to plunge into a deeper, probably existential and philosophical approach to death and dying and how we can learn and enrich our present lives with death and dying, with the perspective, what it means and how we can evolve and become better ourselves every single day through this practice. Alors, merci. Je vous aime. See you next week. Ciao.